All right, on this episode of Bare Knuckle Bowker, very excited to be talking to an individual who I haven't gotten the chance to speak to in about 2 years as of now, and readying to take on new adventures in the world of bare knuckle boxing and returning under a new promotional umbrella now with BKB Bare Knuckle Boxing, formerly BYB Extreme, and great having Tyler Goodjohn on the program. How's it going, man?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me back on. Um, yeah, it's good to speak to you again.
Yeah, for sure. It's so great to see you back in the space. Like, what was the, I guess, timeline like from your last bare knuckle fight to just getting to this juncture, readying to return back to the world of gloveless combat and all?
I mean, it's been quite the journey. To be fair, it's been what like nearly 2 years since my last bare knuckle fight in South Carolina. I went back into made an attempt to go back to professional boxing in America. I just couldn't get the fights, and then I've since I was obviously living in Florida. I've come back to England, and just back settling into life here in England. Got back training and a new promotion back in bare knuckle again.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Like, what I guess kind of really began that dialogue with the promotion for you to get back into the world of bare knuckle. Like, how did all of that play out to where you're now part of the bare knuckle boxing fold here with BKB?
I mean, obviously I was over at BKFC. I was a big part, as in, from the British side. I'm basically the pioneer of the sport. Here in Britain, I was the first one to go over there and do it. First one to fight for the title. Um, I had a lot of bad experiences with BKFC. A lot of bad experiences. And eventually, obviously, after the Soto fight, I more or less just had to. Well, I say walk away. I was more or less blackballed as well. I wasn't spoke to by BKFC again after the Tony Soto fight, which was probably one of the fights of the year. I had no contact at all with BKFC. Like I said earlier, I sort of thought about getting back into boxing. And then, for whatever reason, that didn't happen. I just couldn't get the fights over in the States. And then, I come back to England and I thought, do you know what? I've got one more shot at this bare knuckle, man. I'm the man in this game. And look, that triangle and over 3 minute rounds suits me all day long. So for me, it was about having one more shot at bare knuckle. This platform, BKB, with the triangle ring, I love it. I love it. I love the longer rounds. So one more shot at bare knuckle. And I think that this is going to be the best one yet.
And relative to what you know about the situation, which might not be a lot considering the fact that you just outlined there's not been that communication with the promotion subsequent to your fight with Tony Soto. But I guess from your understanding, like, why didn't things work out with BKFC? Like, you kind of touch on a lot of instances that weren't necessarily great with them in the later stages.
BKFC are poor, mate. Really, really poor. They're a really poorly organized promotion. I mean, to look at on their shows, it looks $1 million. The production, the shows itself, magnificent, but very, very poorly organized behind the scenes. And the contracts they give me, they weren't even living up to the contracts they give me. All the stuff that they're sort of saying they were going to do. The train expenses, the accommodation, flights, medical attention. They didn't stick to any of it. And obviously, look, I've been in this game 23, nearly 24 years, 15 as a professional. And, it's not my first rodeo. And at the end of the day, I'm not gonna suffer it. And I'm vocal about it. I come out with it in podcasts and what have you. BKFC didn't like it. At the end of the day, if you don't like it, just live up to what you're promising to do. You know, it's not a hard, it's really not that difficult. When you say you're going to do something, just do it, and then the person hasn't got the opportunity to say something. Do you know what I mean? And it was really, from my point of view, very annoying because, like I say, just a really poorly run promotion. That didn't live up to anything they said, basically. So in the end, they blackballed me because it's easier to blackball me than it is to have me speak out about all the bullshit they were putting me through.
So you felt like they almost like punished you in a sense for going public with some things you weren't satisfied with.
Oh, 1,000,000%, 100,000,000%. They punished me, they blackballed me, they've shunned me, because it's easier to deal with me like that than it is to have me speaking truths to everyone, you know, at the end of the day. So Dave Feldman and his poorly run promotion, BKFC, terrible.
I mean, I'm sorry to hear you went through that. That definitely sounds like a frustrating situation. It seems like this is kind of an interesting scenario, though, because I was reading in an interview that you had kind of in the past maybe had some cross words was the operative wording with Jim and Joe from, BKB, who are obviously now very involved in this new promotion, which the now former BYB Extreme like acquired that company and etc. So yeah, it seems like you were able to kind of like patch things up there and everything like that. Like what did the path to kind of reconciling with those guys look like and everything?
I mean, look, it hasn't been easy. It was one of those scenarios where I think we both just sort of had to, you know, um, suck it up and put our egos to one side. And then, I actually had someone, a middleman, contact them first of all. They were chatting for me, and then in the end, I just contacted myself and just said, look, you know, we both recognise that we actually, we could have dealt with things better. And in hindsight, with the way that BKC have dealt with me, I mean, what Jim and Joe done in comparison to what BKFC had done to me is nothing. Do you know what I mean? So it's something that actually, let's be grown ups and let's just get over it and let's move on. Because having me back in the promotion is not only great for me, it's great for business, for the promotion. I'm a character. I'm always in fight of the night. So let's go to work.
And it's an interesting scenario for you because you kind of touched on it there, just how much you, I guess, contributed to BKB when it was kind of its own autonomous thing before it was acquired by this new entity and everything like that. But you're still at an age where there's presumably quite a bit more gas in the tank. So, kind of an interesting spot where you have been that influential figure in the modern era, but it still seems like there are many chapters to unfurl in this story here.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Obviously, when I first come to bare knuckle, it was off the back of actually losing my boxing license. So it was for me at the time. It was more right. I need to get my head into something because I'm going to lose it. I just lost my job. I'd been a professional boxer for like 7 years. I need to get myself back into something. And then the way it just sort of unfolded, and the way that I was very much suited to bare knuckle. Yeah, it just all felt together, and then obviously going out to BKFC in America, and then them not dealing with me the way that they really should have. And at the end of the day, they'll be annoyed with themselves because they know that I'm a huge character in bare knuckle. I'm a huge loss to them. But having that whole chapter of my life and putting that to bed now, I can come back to BKB, BYB, and just, do my thing here again. And I think, look, the British fans appreciate that I'm going to be back. I know there's a lot of people that dislike me because, again, of the character I am, but you can't dislike the fact that I'm fighting again because I'm always putting on the best fights.
Yeah, and I'm curious to maybe get some insights into all of that because obviously you were well established with BKB, your last fight under that specific banner being that fight you had with Sean George, where you emerged with the BKB lightweight championship around your waist. Like, I mean, so many different aspects to the company nowadays, though. Like, does this feel like something that's familiar to you? Does it feel like an altogether new experience, just with the slightly different rule set now with the active clinch fighting and the Trigon relative to what BKB had before?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's at the end of the day, it's bare knuckle fighting. It actually, look, like I said earlier, this is going to suit me far more. It being the 3 minute rounds, the smaller space. There's nowhere to run away at the end of the day, and that's always been my best asset in fighting. My cardio, my strength, my determination. They are my best attributes. The fact that now the ring is much smaller, we have longer rounds to fight him. It's just going to suit me. You see me at my best in BKB in that square ring when obviously 2 seconds. Reggie, go away. Sorry, the dog. You see me at my best in BKB when obviously the square ring where I could corner people, put pressure on them. That BKFC, you didn't get to see me at my very best because it's a silly octagon circle size ring. It was absolutely huge, and there were no ropes, so you couldn't pin people down. People were just running away left, right, and centre. So now we're back in this triangle, and it's 3 minute rounds. Yeah, it's really got me intrigued, man. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, that is a very interesting point for sure because, yeah, the BKB style, or rather like the ring framework and how it can kind of inform your approach, I would feel like, as you said, that's even more compounded with something like the Mighty Trigon. Like, it seems like a combative space that really, forces the issue and kind of like really gets that fight kicking off in a big way more than really any other combative space I can think of, at least.
Yeah, I mean, look, I obviously come from boxing. I'm looking in a fight to pin you down on the ropes, pin you in the corners, put pressure on you, sit on your chest all night long. And obviously, the more space you have to run away, the better for you. Which in BKFC, let's face it, you had all the space to run away from me. This triangle is just going to reduce that even more. And the longer rounds, I'm just going to drown people. So it suits me down to the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, just cool to see you back in the bare knuckle fold overall, man. Definitely, like you said, you're a character who adds a lot, to the sport and everything like that. But I guess just that last bare knuckle fight you had, I'd be curious to maybe get your thoughts on some of what Tony Soto has been able to do subsequent to your fight. Like, obviously you took issue with that BKFC 42 fight and the decision that was put out there, but just, I guess, what are your thoughts on what Soto has been able to do since? I guess specifically what I'm referring to is his lightweight championship fight that he had against Franco Tenaglia that a lot of people seem to be excited about.
Do you know what? Look, I don't like Tony Soto, right? Obviously, because the way that he's, blocked me on all my social media, done everything not to rematch me. Look, everyone who see that fight knows who won that fight in South Carolina. It made no sense for the English boy to go and win in South Carolina against the South Carolina fighter. Business talks, money talks, bullshit walks. That's just how it is. But I will say that fight with Soto and Tenaglia was one hell of a fight. It was unbelievable. Like an unbelievable fight. And I tip my hat to both of them, man, because they beat the shit out of each other that night. And no one can argue. No one can argue with that. Do you know what I mean? No one can argue that wasn't a fantastic fight. So, yeah, as much as I don't like Soto, I don't agree with the fact that he's blocked me on everything so that, he doesn't have any contact with me. So he doesn't, I'm out of the equation basically. But that fight was incredible.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. That is kind of unfortunate. I guess ultimately you're now in different promotions, so it couldn't be facilitated at this point. But I think any bare knuckle fan would want to see you rematch Soto, considering how quality it was. I didn't really know he had you blocked on every platform like that.
He's blocked me. He blocked me. Well, so since we've fought, I've actually had 3 Instagrams. I've had two deleted by Instagram, and I've just recently started up another one. He's even blocked that one, and I've only been started up what 4 or 5 weeks. I've had no contact with him for what nearly 2 years, and the guy's still blocking this profile I've just recently started up. That's how much he doesn't want to fight me again. He's even blocking the one that I opened like 4 or 5 weeks ago. It's mental, but. Like I say, I tipped my hat to him in his last fight. That was an incredible fight, but you are a pussy still. The South Carolina pussy, mate. I owned you that night, and everyone there that night was clapping and cheering me. They were booing him. You see the comments on YouTube about the fight. The comments are hilarious. Um, I've just had to suck it up and get on with it.
Yeah, and I mean, to that point, you do have your next assignment locked in, and I would be curious to get your thoughts on Gypsy Joe Smith, who, you know, undefeated so far, 1-0, one knockout. Like, what were your thoughts on, I guess, his initial bare knuckle fight, his initial foray into the sport, debuting at BKB 36 in February and getting that stoppage over Ryan McCann fairly quickly, sub 1 minute into the first round?
I mean, it's very hard to obviously look too much into it because it was very quick. I mean, look, it was a great shot that he caught him with. You can't really argue with it. At the end of the day, it's going to be game. Um, the fight itself is obviously in Wales. He's from Wales. He's unbeaten. I'm a huge scalp for anyone in this game, so he's going to come and give it his all, isn't he? So, it's the fight that I want. Almost 2 years out. Um, I wanted a big fight to come back into it. The big fight that I really wanted, he wouldn't fight me. So, Jim and Joe said about this guy. I looked at it and thought, look, yeah, he's going to come and have a go. It's in Wales. So yeah, this is a good fight for me to get back into.
Yeah, it's just yeah, very interesting. I mean, you were kind of touching on it before too, like just the I guess change in your preparations because you had previously fought Luis Palomino for the BKFC lightweight title and then went on to train with him for quite a while. Like, whereabouts are you training now, and who would you credit as like your primary training partners?
Yeah, so obviously I was over in Miami training over there for a couple of years. I'm now back with Steve Whitwell at St Ives Boxing Academy, which is actually where I first started bare knuckle. That's my coach from my first fight against Lafferty, Tony Lafferty. Um, the fight I had against Mark Navarro, the fight I had against Sean George. Steve was in my corner, so yeah, I'm back. I'm back where I want to be. To be fair, obviously I loved my time in Miami. I was with a unbelievable coach over there, Eric El Tigre Castellanos, Palomino's trainer, and I loved every minute of it. But hadn't I, had the opportunity to go do that, I would have stayed with Steve. St Ives Boxing Academy, incredible coach, and just an incredible person. Like it, it takes a certain person in my life to speak to me and really get into my head. And Steve can do that. When he tells me I'm doing something wrong in the corner, um, I listen to every word he says to me, and that takes a special person to be able to do that. So, from here on out, Steve's forever going to be my coach.
Yeah, it's so important to have that connection, and I guess it kind of like reintroduces you to, like you said, that point in your career where you really began with BKB, like you're beginning in bare knuckle overall. So yeah, I mean that kind of like familiarity and rapport is so essential to a fighter, it would seem.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, when you're going to war, sorry, you've got to have someone that you fully trust and love, and you're going to war for both of you at the end of the day. And I know that what he says to me, he's saying it with every best intention there is, So, um, like I say, I'm completely grounded and listen to him. When he tells you something, and that's what I need. I can be a hot-headed fighter. I like to get involved in a fight. I like to get involved in a big tear up. So I need that dominant figure in my corner to be like, no, actually, look, stick to your boxing, do this, do that, and connect to me in that kind of way.
And obviously very squarely focused on this fight, considering it's like the big return to bare knuckle after, quite a while and everything like that. But I feel like there's a certain segment of the bare knuckle boxing community that would be curious to see a fight with former BKB champion Scott McHugh. And it seems like there's been a bit of a back and forth to say over the years. Like, do you foresee that transpiring? Is that something that would have future interest to you if you get your ideal outcome here?
I mean, it's got future interest for me, but it really hasn't got future interest for Scott McMelt. He's the biggest coward in the game, mate. I mean, what was it, like 15, 16 months ago? The guy called me out. I was in America at the time, obviously in a totally different promotion. Um, and he thought he would get away with calling me out when he got all gassed up after winning a fight. I answered that call over and over and over again for about a year. He's gone, he's disappeared. I don't know where he's gone. Even Jim and Joe were trying to contact him, talk to him about making this fight happen. That was the fight that I wanted to come back to and have in April. I wanted him to be my first fight, but that couldn't happen because he didn't want it. So it's completely and utterly down to Scott McHugh. Whenever he wants to step up, I'll be there, mate. I've been calling for this fight from the rooftops for over a year now. I'm getting bored of it. So it's up to him. He needs to grab a pair of bollocks.
I mean, it seems like there's a lot of people that the bare knuckle boxing community is intrigued seeing you fight. Like I've been kind of reading some articles that are talking about how some people would like to see maybe, for instance, if you get that momentum rolling here, like maybe a fight with, for instance, super welterweight champ Liam Reese, or even like someone like LT Nelson potentially, who is like a dual division champion, a bit on the higher side in terms of like where he's at weight category wise. But
Yeah,
just to say, it seems like a lot of people are discussing fights that they would really like to see for you in this new promotional fold for you.
yeah, 100%. Look, first and foremost, I'm back. I'm back to be world champion. I'm back to be champion at my weight. So if that means Reese has got the belt, I would 1,000,000% fight him. And then we go from there. But yeah, I'm here to be the champion at my weight. LT, I mean, what a fighter! What an incredible fighter! I'm a huge fan of his. I've actually had chats with his training team in the past. They have a lot of respect for me. I have a huge amount of respect for him. And I think that me and him would just, I mean, it would make a hell of a fight. So yeah, I could see that down the line, definitely. But first and foremost, I'm here to be a champion at my weight. I need to get that done and dusted, and then I can move on to, these other fights.
Yeah, it just seems like such an interesting time in the sport. Like it seems like BKB is growing in such a big way and everything like that. I think it's cool that they have that Vice TV broadcast deal for the next little while. It just seems like it's kind of upping its level as time goes on with the company.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, look, it's such an exciting sport. I've been involved in it a long time now. Um, I'm not just saying this from a point of view where it's I'm bitter because I'm not with BKFC anymore. But look, that triangle ring and that them 3 minute rounds. I mean, that's the real deal. Do you know what I mean? That's compared to BKFC, that silly circle and the 2 minutes. The triangle is the real deal. So the more it can get out to people, the more people are going to love it, more people are going to become fans, and then it will slowly become, more mainstream. Look, if you want to see blood, violence, knockouts, this is the sport for you, isn't it? So yeah, I can see. I always say to people, look, give bare knuckle 5, 10 years. It's going to be the biggest sport on the planet because it's too entertaining. It's far too entertaining not to be. You have your boxing fans who, like me, I totally appreciate boxing skill and technique. You have the MMA fans who really appreciate, all that goes into that, all the technique work. But you have predominantly most casual fans just want to see blood and violence, and bare knuckle does that.
And you're kind of getting me thinking about just even the different considerations that are at play fighting in, something like the BKB ring as compared to the kind of ring that BKFC uses. And I guess I ask this in a context involving someone that there's rumblings of you having like about kind of like tentatively mapped out with him. Like there was some talk about fighting Jimmy Sweeney prior to coronavirus pandemic issues kind of getting in the way of that from what I understand and everything like that. They're having a rubber match in BKFC with Jimmy Sweeney and Rico Franco. Like, how much do you, I guess, think this new competitive space will kind of inform that rubber match and everything like that? Because, yeah, just what we're talking about, it would seem like it fits within that.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I actually watched an interview with Jimmy the other day. I mean, look, Jimmy's got to be in his early 40s now. So I mean, he's knocking on now. He's not, but but I would say that with that circle ring, it suits Jimmy far more than it does Ricardo Franco. Um, in that he can box and move, which is exactly what Jimmy does. So I would say that that circle ring would actually suit Jimmy much more. And look, who knows? Like I say, he's in his early 40s, but he might go on and do some good things in that.
Was that a fight that you felt any kind of way about it not happening, just in the sense of how, I guess, pedigreed and respected he is across multiple weight divisions? Or do you not really focus on stuff like that and you're like, oh, the past is the past, it played out how it did?
Yeah, I mean, it did play out how it did play out, really. I mean, in hindsight, I was obviously coming off that huge win over Sean George at my weight. Um, and, I've discussed this with Jim a couple of weeks ago. And I sort of, to be fair, I wanted another really big fight to get back into. And there wasn't really anyone at my weight that really motivated me, uh, you know, th- that big fight. So, when it was asked if I'd move up in weight to fight Jimmy, it was like, wow, yeah, okay, this is a really, that's an inspiring fight for me. To beat that guy who pretty much started BKB when it was at its smallest. So I obviously, we both trained for like 10 weeks for that fight. It got really built up, and then obviously COVID happened, and it was like the first week of COVID that the fight was meant to be on. So now I look back on it, it played out how it played out. But it would have been a great fight. But I was going up a weight, So who knows? It was sort of a fight that probably didn't suit me, in that Jimmy is very much a box and move type fighter, and I'm a very much a pressure fighter. So I think it perhaps favoured him more, and obviously being upper weight as well. But they're the kind of fights that I like. Them underdog fights, the fights where people think that I'm going to lose. That's when I get most motivated. So who knows what would have happened. It played out the way it did, and I ended up going to America in COVID. But yeah, it's funny how things work out, man. I was the first one to go to BKFC. Everyone hated me for it, and then one by one, they all went over there, and now Jimmy's over there. It's funny, isn't it, how time goes on and things change.
Well, yeah, it seems like they've made, I guess, a lot of efforts to create like, British titles, European titles, just have more of a presence in that particular part of the world and everything like that. And I'd be kind of curious to get your thoughts on this too, because we're talking about like how much the sport of bare knuckle has grown and what it's done for, I guess, just certain combat sports careers. I ask this in the context of I saw a few years ago you had shared a spot on the Bare Knuckle show along with Mike Perry. Like, seems like he's kind of really been rejuvenated by just the presence of bare knuckle boxing and currently owner of Dirty Boxing Championship, etc. Like, what are your thoughts on, I guess, just what he's been able to do in the context of, I guess, how much bare knuckle has maybe been a catalyst to a lot of that?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's done great for him. You know, all power to him. Do you know what I mean? But he's obviously in Dave Feldman's pocket, and yeah, look, it's done well for him. At the end of the day, he's getting the opportunities to fight people who are bringing over a lot of supporters on their Instagram and everything else. He's fighting, sort of ex or on their way out fighters and things like that. So yeah, it's done really well for him. I mean, I like the fact that like fighters like Austin Trout and people like that are over into BKFC now. You got like ex world champion boxers. It seems like it was too um, settled on like ex UFC fighters, retired UFC fighters. I like to see more boxers get in the mix, which makes it interesting. Um, but yeah, Mike Perry. Look, Mike Perry's always in a good fight. You can't again, no matter what I think of the guy, is it always in good fights. So you can't knock him for that.
It's kind of funny. I wasn't even intending to ask this per se, but I was combing over some research notes I had from a prior conversation we had ahead of your fight with felony Charles Bennett. And there
Mm.
was an anecdote where you were like reflecting back on how you were chief support to Anthony Joshua when you won the English title at the O2 and everything like that. And I was seeing a recent situation where Jake Paul was indicating he wanted a fight with Anthony Joshua. What are your thoughts on that?
The thing with Jake Paul is Jake Paul says things for clickbait, so you never really know if he's just saying it or if he genuinely means it or not. I mean, look, if he fights Anthony Joshua, I mean, look, I would love to see that because I think he gets absolutely tuned up by Anthony Joshua. I think he gets knocked out. I mean, he's nowhere near ready for that. But if he actually thinks that, go ahead, boy, go and do it, man. Because I know there's going to be a lot of people out there who want to see you get absolutely sparked out, especially after the whole Mike Tyson debacle that went down. So yeah, no, if he genuinely means it, go ahead, boy.
I mean, you used the language of debacle. What were your thoughts on that whole Netflix situation where him and Tyson threw down there and everything like that?
It was just it just goes to prove, look, if anything can be marketed right, anything can be sold to the public, man. Anything. I mean, anything. Even a 60-year-old Mike Tyson. I mean, it had people believing that he was going to go in there and knock Jake Paul out, and it was going to be this and it was going to be that. I mean, look, anyone who has half a boxing brain and just half a just half a brain basically knew that that wasn't going to be the case. At the end of the day, age catches up with us all. What Mike Tyson was like when he was 21, he can't do when he's 60. And just because we all see a 10-second clip of him smashing the pads to bits didn't mean that he was going to do it on fight night. And it was just embarrassing because, obviously Mike Tyson, after about 20 seconds, Jake Paul just carried him, just jabbing him and just moving about, and yeah, just carried him because he knew, look, he couldn't knock Mike Tyson out in front of all them people because how badly it would look, how badly it would do his character. So he just carried him, and it was just a bit of nothing, really, wasn't it?
I mean, it's interesting because I think so many people respect Mike and whatnot, and it's such a contrast to, I guess, maybe the sentiment that those same people would have for Jake Paul. And I guess I say that in the most impartial way that I can, considering I'm someone covering it. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think people kind of interpreted that card too through the lens of like, oh, well, the Taylor Serrano rematch was such a great fight. So at least people got to see that on such a big
Yeah, I
stage.
mean,
But
look,
yeah.
yeah, I agree. I agree with that. Lots of eyes were on that. That obviously was a great fight. But in terms of the whole Jake Paul thing, the build up and just Jake Paul in himself, at the end of the day, that guy wouldn't win a Southern Area belt as here in England as a professional fighter. So I think it paints a very false image to the public, to the casual boxing fan who thinks that, because there are people out there who generally think Jake Paul is the next big thing, and he's not. He's not, and it's just like we have to live in the reality at the end of the day, and online paints such a false reality. So you can go in there and you can jab 60-year-old Mike Tyson's head off. But if you want to fight an actual professional boxer for a meaningful title, you're getting killed. And it's over. The whole circus is over. As simple as that.
Yeah, I know I hear where you're coming from, man, but it's been great getting to talk to you. Like I said, it's been a little while now, but I do want to be mindful of your time, Tyler. So I figured I'd give you the floor if you had a final thought you wanted to add as we're wrapping up here on Bare Knuckle Bowker.
Yeah, just thank you for having me back on. I'm obviously really looking forward to being back. And yeah, just I've been working super hard. It's been tough coming back from America, and being back home, and this fighting, getting back into fighting, getting my head into something positive has really, really helped me a lot. And I'm just looking forward to putting it all together on the 19th of April, and then hopefully moving on and to something bigger, perhaps a world title, this point, at some point in this year or whatever. But yeah, no, I'm just looking forward to it. And all the people that have supported me. I have a lot of really, really cool supporters, man. Really, really do support me. And I'm just really grateful of them, really, basically. Um, they get me through some of my low days when I've been training, and I'm thinking, damn, what's the point in all this? My supporters really pick me up and know what to say to get me back out there, so I'm grateful.
Well, that's an awesome parting thought, man, and it's going to be great seeing this fight coming up here on April 19th in Cardiff with Joe Smith and everything like that. I'm certainly excited for BKB 40 and great seeing you back in the sport in general, man. But to reiterate, thanks for coming on Bare Knuckle Bowker and all the best in the remainder of the preparations here. And also have a good rest of your day there, Tyler. Thank you.
Thank you.